ready to have a panel. I believe that panel is going to be executed by Miss Beth Stafford, and she's going to lead us in a discussion with Adam McClendon, Benji Nolot, and Casey Alvarez.
So, first question is for Benji. Last year, you mentioned William Wilberforce and his efforts in changing the mindset of a nation and how slavery was viewed. Today, what do you think is the biggest obstacle in changing the mindset of a nation and how modern slavery is viewed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, how do I answer this in 3 minutes? I think it's important to, first of all, say that the issue in terms of sex trafficking and the existence of the larger commercial sex industry is so deeply rooted in a cultural mindset and understanding of prostitution of commercial sex as something that is sexually liberating, empowering, a human right. There's these myths, that kind of shape and define the way that people understand the sex industry. And so last year when I talked about Wilberforce, one of the things that I pointed out is how that, it was the same way during that time. There was, for slavery, regarding slavery, so there was a cover narrative about slavery. There was a pro-slavery movement. There were people who advocated for slavery and said that had all these myths about what slavery was. And so he spent literally 46 years shifting the locus of thought and the mass consciousness of society regarding that to help people connect with the deeper truth of what slavery was at its core. Now, part of the reason why slavery perpetuated and part of the reason why that cover narrative was successful is because of deep-seated racism that I believe exists within the heart of every person. And it's a fundamental mistrust of other races that I believe that we are at some level almost born into on this planet. And so we have to work on ourselves to overcome, right, those things. But the cover narrative, when people said, well, this and that, they wanted to believe it because men did not want to relinquish their control of other men, right? White men did not want to surrender their entitlement to subjugate, oppress, and exploit black men, is what it came down to. And so they had all these cover narratives. Well, Wilberforce had to break through that by bringing the palpable injustice of slavery to the forefront of people's conscience and appealing to them and appealing to them and appealing to them. And over 46 years it finally shifted. And then on his deathbed, 3 days before he dies, he gets the news that slavery had been abolished. So bringing that to today, I told you it's going to be hard to do in 30 minutes. So bringing that to today, I'm saying all that because I think it's really helpful context to understand what we're dealing with today. The reason why the cover narrative of the commercial sex industry is so powerful, palpable, successful at capturing the imagination of the masses is because we want to believe it. Because we are fundamentally a sexist, misogynist culture. And I know that's probably not a popular thing to say, but it's true. I was talking with one of my personal mentors, and I asked him this question. I'll bring this to a close. I asked him this question about this whole issue, and he said, the issue is not whether we have sexism or not, but whether we're dealing with our sexism. And so again, it's a fundamental belief that women have less value than men. That's why I said it's hard to answer in 30 seconds or 3 minutes, because this is deep stuff. I mean, this sexism, misogyny. So without fully unpacking it, just to say that cover narrative is successful because of that reason. So what is the biggest obstacle to overcoming that? I think it's dealing with those deeper fundamental issues about how do we view women, and are we ready as a society to elevate them from the basement of patriarchal subjugation and give them the equal place in our platform like we have today. So I'm sorry, it's not a good answer because there's just I got layers and layers and layers, but
it's hard to cover. There's a lot of things.
I'm just chipping at the tip of the iceberg there.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring a dictionary next year.
advocate and people avoiding dehumanizing others in their daily lives. Because porn is a part of so many people's regular lives, how does porn contribute to the dehumanization of others?
Porn is orgasmic eye candy. And when you engage in interaction with another human being solely for self-fulfillment, you're undercutting the value that God designed within community. Does that make sense? And this is what we do all the time. And ladies, you just do it in a different way, stereotypically, than men do. But we are masters at using other people in order to boost our own identity and desires. And we really need to recapture this understanding of community. Porn is I hesitate to use the word, but it is a cancer. You know, when people struggle with physical cancers, this is a spiritual cancer that is destroying our society. And it's adding to this, again, this narrative that pursues self-gratification. Out there, I heard an interview by a Southern Baptist ordained pastor the other day who is absolutely insane. I'm going to talk about him Sunday when I'm preaching. This idea of palamory, I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's basically you can engage in any kind of sexual activity, cuddling or whatever, as long as everyone is happy and it is ordained by God. This is what he preaches. And so there is this modern day cultural value that pleasure is the idolatry before which we bow down. And if it feels good, and if it's not hurting anybody, that's the catch in our culture, then pursue it. And that is not what God says. And we have to get to the point we believe that God's laws are boundaries to protect us and not prison bars to restrict us. We live in a society that believes that these laws exist to keep me from something good. And so we dismiss them and rewrite them according to our own narrative. Anyway, I'm about to get on a soapbox here. I was going to say this to close out. I was first exposed to porn when I was 5 years old. I was molested by a man in my teenage years, and I was addicted to hardcore pornography from 11 to 16. And it almost destroyed me. It is not a part of my life, but given to my own desires, I would go there in a heartbeat. But by the grace of God. You can, I was going to say this to anybody who's struggling, that you can have freedom, you can have victory, and you can walk in obedience to God in this area of your life. But it will destroy the foundation of relationships. And that's all.
Thank you. Casey, one of the core issues that envelops trafficking is a gap of services available to victims once they exit the industry. Other than safe housing and shelter, what is the most noticeable gap you've witnessed that needs to be addressed for victims?
You know what? They need a support system and a familial care. So, like my support system, they need what you have. Most of us have what they need. The things that we have access to in our daily lives is what victims want most. And that's security and love, and so we can provide a support system that can help them to take steps to get to places of security and knowing and receiving love and feeling that. But if I need a ride, when I don't have a ride, I have a support system and somebody will give me a ride. If I am sick and I need some soup, I have a support system and somebody will bring me soup if I pick up the phone. If I need to go to the hospital because I have an STD or I've been raped or I'm not sure if I'm pregnant or I'm miscarrying, somebody I know would give me a ride there. If I wanted to try out church to see maybe if it was for me, somebody would give me a ride there. So what victims need, or what most people can provide, you don't have to be a professional. You have to be somebody that cares and that's willing to let their lives be interrupted. So often we'll spend planning for a 1-week yearly mission trip and ignore the people in need, the opportunities that we see on a regular basis. So victims need a sweater and a meal and somebody to go pick up a prescription. And you know what? How do I go through the process of getting an ID? I'm stressed out in crowds and standing in line. Would you come and sit with me? And when you are a mom or a worker or a father or you're employed or you're in school, it means letting your life be interrupted, because we all have our things that our lives are busy with. And we have to be willing to say that you're worth my time, that you matter to me and you matter to God. And we have to let our actions back that up. So safe shelter is necessary. They have to have a secure place to reside, but they need a network of support people. And for each person that says, yes, I can do that, then it increases the probability of a person being restored.
That's very good. Okay, Benji. Many state laws conflict with federal laws when defining a minor victim of trafficking. Federal law states that a minor in prostitution is automatically a victim, while some state laws state that minors over 12 must have force, fraud, or coercion proved in order to deem them a victim. Because of this, a 13, 14, 15, 16, or 17-year-old may be arrested for prostitution instead of being treated as a victim. What steps need to be taken to address this, and how can we let communities know about these issues?
It's another great question, and it just raises so many issues on so many different levels, and each one kind of deserves its own explanation for. I think, just to kind of cut to the chase, I think that one way that we can be really effective is forming local task forces where every branch of law enforcement is represented, as well as the NGO community, and work collectively together in a localized context to take a victim-centered approach to addressing the problem of trafficking. One area where we've seen this done very effectively is in Orange County. And we're working towards that reality in Kansas City, where I'm at. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of buy-in and a lot of investment and a lot of education. The way that Orange County became successful, I'll just kind of tell a little bit of their story, is because some people in the Garden Grove Police Department got really energized about wanting their police department to have a better understanding of the dynamics of how prostitution functions and operates, in order to, like I said before, take a more victim-centered approach towards dealing with these cases. So the energy and the passion and the compassion that spread throughout the Garden Grove Police Department then spread to the local DA's office, and spread to all other forms of law enforcement. They formed a task force, they got grants, they invested heavily in education, and basically what they've developed is a system now where their investigators are trained in constitutional law, and they have a very keen understanding of the nuances of how prostitution operates. And so when they investigate their cases, they're accounting for all the various complex factors in order to build an airtight case. And so right now what's happening in Orange County is that cases before that were not even being prosecuted are now not only being prosecuted, but they are getting felony level offenses for it. And they've gotten actually life sentences in multiple cases. They have, since this turning point has happened in the last number of years, they have every single case now that has been brought to the DA's office has been prosecuted, 100%. And they have a 100% conviction rate. And so it's been a complete transformation. And so they're a great example of how a local community can be involved. And I'm just giving, I mean, there's much more to say about what's going on there, but it's a great example of how local community can be involved in bringing criminal culpability to the pimps who are traffickers that are exploiting girls who are underage and even ones after they've had their 18th birthday. And it's amazing, and would maybe even be, I can maybe talk to you later about maybe even bringing somebody out from that task force at some point. But so I think that's a good example to point to.
Okay, Adam, if you could speak to men in the community with an urge to encourage them to get involved in the battle against human trafficking, what would you say to them? Many men believe this is not an arena for men to enter because sex trafficking seems like a women's ministry. How would you like to speak to that?
Well, many men are wrong.
Amen.
You know, I would say, I think, number one, this isn't a women's ministry issue. This is a humanity issue. And we understand, again, I think we have a deep-seated problem with not understanding the Bible. We understand American Christianity. We do not know the Bible. And when the Bible speaks to community, it speaks to it in a very intentional way that I don't have time to go into today. I would encourage you to check out a book called When the Church Was a Family. It's an outstanding representation of this theology. But I just want to say this to the men quickly, because I'm loving these answers and I want to hear some more. God has placed within you a passion to be a rescuer. When I look at my 10-year-old son, if he hits one of his sisters, he gets wore out verbally and maybe physically if it demands it, a spanking or something along those lines. Now he's getting to the age where that's not really effective, but conversations work better. But I tell him, God made you bigger and stronger as a general rule than most women so that you could protect and defend them. Not to be some type of chauvinist, but so that you can rescue them from danger. Not that women can't do powerful things. They can't have 3 young women in my home that I'm raising to be confident, strong women. I'm having them meet other strong women for lunch to learn how to be effective in our society and all the ministry opportunities that exist for them. But for my son, I want him to understand God put within your heart a passion to rescue for a reason. So rescue. That's not just to rescue the beauty for sexual exploitation. That's to rescue the beauty so she can enjoy and experience the greatness of God and the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so, men, there is a calling there for you.
Yeah. Back to you, Benji. If you've been, no, you haven't. You've been outspoken advocate in brave ways, defending women's rights to be free from sexual exploitation and harassment. How do you push through these difficult conversations and advocacy when you get pushback from critics and from those who disagree? Has it been an easy journey or one that you've had to fight to stay on course with?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's the issue of how to address the larger commercial sex industry and which is the system in which trafficking happens is a very controversial one. And so we've seen Amnesty International come out in favor of the pro-sex work model of prostitution, and we've seen, you know, George Soros pour untold millions of dollars into supporting that version of legislation and that idea about prostitution. And so it's a very polarized debate, and I think, you know, the thing for me and the thing for us at Exodus Cry is really trying to look at this issue at its core and to understand, you know, because the question, the way that you're framing it suggests that some are in favor of exploiting women, and, you know, that we're fighting against that. And what I would say is that it's more insidious than that. It's like, so we're trying to fight for women to be free from this system of oppression and exploitation. The people who are fighting against us see us as the oppressors. So that's what makes it difficult. And they're saying they're the liberators. You know, Amnesty International, they posted pictures on social media toasting with champagne glasses about what a great human rights accomplishment they had made when they adopted a position of full decriminalization of prostitution. In other words, they said, we are going to use, because they're the largest humanitarian organization in the world, we're going to use our network of influence and our presence among the most marginalized, defenseless, impoverished women and children around the world. We're going to use all of our influence to promote and suggest to them that a life in prostitution is a viable way to become a powerful woman and support yourself. And so they literally thought to themselves, this is amazing what we have accomplished. And they're toasting with champagne glasses. And for us, at Exodus Cry, we see this as a huge step back in the fight for women's equality and the safety, dignity, and freedom of women and children. And so it's a hotly contested thing. And again, to take it back to the example of Wilberforce, I think every inch of ground we have to fight for. This is rife in the anti-trafficking movement, this idea. The whole Freedom Network, which is another large conference down in Texas, is a network of anti-trafficking organizations who are advocating for full decriminalization of prostitution. That means pimping, brothel keeping, like what you see in Germany. Mega brothels 12 stories high with scantily clad women plastered alongside of it, inviting the thousands of men in the community to come perpetrate against these women every day. That's what literally anti-trafficking organizations are advocating for that. And so it's a huge, huge issue that you're touching on with that. And so, yeah, I would say that we're right. And we are after the deeper truth, and we're taking at all costs attitude and approach to it, because we believe that that this is what we're advocating for as the answer. And there's lots of proof to bear that out, but anyways, I gotta keep my answers short. You just keep hitting all my hot buttons. I'm like, no.
Okay, we'll probably finish up here with Adam, because we only have 3 minutes left, so that's good. As a spiritual leader, truly on a national level, at what level do you think the church should be involved in the battle against human trafficking and exploitation? And how can churches and pastors get involved, and what practical steps can be taken to engage these issues?
So I'm a pastor at heart. I was pastoring here at Spring Hill Baptist Church, north of Springfield, and love the local church. The only reason I set the position I did was because it gave me the opportunity to influence leaders across denominational lines, literally around the world. And I get to meet with pastors all over the place and challenge their view in these two areas. And the two things I think are fundamentally flawed in our local churches by well-intentioned, I want to be clear, well-intentioned, God-fearing, God-loving men and women, is that they are misrepresenting the gospel and misrepresenting biblical community in their pursuit of building a personal empire. That's what's happening in America. We have commercialized the church, and we contributed to this crap. We did. Because we turned pastors into celebrities, and we made it an individual consumer matters most mentality, and it is all about the individual and not about the community. God called us to forsake ourselves and join His community. And when we understand our mutual responsibilities, when we understand the grace that's been lavished upon us in the gospel of Jesus Christ, and we understand our mutual responsibility, it not only encourages us, it compels us to make a difference in these areas. Tomorrow afternoon, if you're still with us, if you're able to be here, I'm going to talk about the Good Samaritan. It compels us to move in very real ways. And so for the pastors specifically, I would just challenge you. I know it's a lonely, isolated place, and your pastors are alone and isolated most of the time. I believe the senior pastor model is unbiblical. I believe the Bible clearly advocates a plurality of elders or pastors. I don't think there's a question about it in my mind. But we have this rock star mentality, and we've got to get beyond that and humble ourselves and say it's not about growing the largest church, but it's about growing a faithful biblical community that is passionate and unwavering on the gospel. I could go on. Good questions.
Thank you.
Give me a box to stand.
Thank you guys. The panel is over. Thank you. Appreciate your time.